In a small, quiet town surrounded by green hills and winding roads, there lived a young woman named Emily Carter. She was 23 years old, fresh out of college, and filled with dreams bigger than the tiny apartment she called home. Emily had always been someone who believed in hard work and determination. Growing up, her family didn't have much money, but they taught her the value of perseverance. Her parents often reminded her that success wasn't about where you started. It was about how far you were willing to go. Emily had just graduated with a degree in business management, an accomplishment she was incredibly proud of. But now, as she navigated the real world, she realized that finding a job wasn't as easy as she'd hoped. For months, she sent out resumes, attended networking events, and practiced answering interview questions in front of her bathroom mirror. Yet, every rejection letter felt like a punch to the gut. Still, Emily refused to give up. She told herself that if she kept trying, something good would eventually come her way. One crisp autumn morning, Emily woke up early, feeling a mix of excitement and nerves bubbling inside her. Today was the day of yet another job interview, but this time, it felt different. The company was one of the most respected names in the industry, a place where innovation thrived and employees were encouraged to think outside the box. It was exactly the kind of environment Emily wanted to be part of. She double-checked her outfit, a clean white blouse tucked neatly into a navy blue skirt, paired with simple black flats. Her hair was tied back in a low ponytail, and she wore minimal makeup, wanting to look professional without appearing overly done up. But there was one problem. Emily didn't own a car. Public transportation in her town was unreliable, and taxis were too expensive for her tight budget. So she relied on her trusty bicycle, a second-hand model she'd bought during her freshman year of college. It wasn't fancy or new. Its paint was chipped in places, and the tires squeaked slightly when she pedaled too fast. But it got her where she needed to go. And for Emily, that was all that mattered. As she wheeled her bike out of the narrow alley behind her building, the cool morning air brushed against her face. The streets were still quiet, save for the occasional car passing by or the chirping of birds perched on nearby trees. Emily took a deep breath, mentally preparing herself for the day ahead. "You've got this," she whispered under her breath, gripping the handlebars tightly. With a final glance at her reflection in the window of her apartment building, she set off toward the office where her interview would take place. The ride wasn't easy. The route to the company's headquarters was long, and the terrain wasn't exactly bike-friendly. There were steep inclines, sharp turns, and stretches of road littered with potholes. At one point, Emily had to swerve suddenly to avoid hitting a stray dog that darted across her path. Her heart raced as she regained control of her bike, muttering a quick apology to the pup before continuing onward. Despite these challenges, she pressed forward, refusing to let anything stand in her way. About halfway through her journey, Emily stopped briefly to catch her breath. She leaned her bike against a lamppost and pulled a water bottle from her bag. As she sipped the cool liquid, she glanced around at the scenery. The sun was beginning to rise higher in the sky, casting golden rays over the landscape. Leaves rustled softly in the breeze, their vibrant reds, oranges, and yellows creating a picturesque view. For a moment, Emily allowed herself to appreciate the beauty around her. Life might have thrown obstacles her way, but days like this reminded her of how much there was to be grateful for. After a few minutes of rest, Emily hopped back onto her bike and resumed her journey. The closer she got to the office, the busier the roads became. Cars zoomed past her, some honking impatiently as drivers hurried to their destinations. Emily tried not to let it bother her. Instead, she focused on maintaining her pace, keeping her eyes fixed on the road ahead. She knew the building she was looking for, a towering structure made of glass and steel that stood out against the surrounding brick buildings. It was impossible to miss. When Emily finally arrived, she parked her bike near the entrance, securing it with a sturdy lock. She wiped her hands on her skirt to remove any dirt and took a moment to compose herself. Her cheeks were flushed from the exertion of biking and her legs felt a little wobbly, but she pushed those thoughts aside. Now wasn't the time to dwell on discomfort. This was her chance to prove herself. to show the people inside that she was capable, intelligent, and ready to contribute. Before stepping inside, Emily glanced down at her bike one last time. It might not have been glamorous, but it represented everything she stood for: resilience, resourcefulness, and an unwavering belief in herself. Smiling softly, she straightened her shoulders and walked toward the gleaming doors of the office building. Little did she know, this decision, to arrive, on 2 wheels instead of 4, would set off a chain of events that would change her life forever. As Emily approached the entrance of the sleek office building, she couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and nervousness bubbling inside her. The towering glass structure seemed to shimmer under the morning sun, its modern design standing in stark contrast to the modest buildings around it. She adjusted her blouse one last time, smoothed out her skirt, and took a deep breath before stepping toward the revolving doors. Just as she reached for the handle, a low rumble caught her attention. Turning her head slightly, she noticed a black, luxury sedan pulling up alongside the curb. It was the kind of car that turned heads, sleek, polished, and exuding an air of sophistication. The driver stepped out first, opening the rear door with practiced precision. Emily paused for a moment, curious despite herself, and watched as a man emerged from the vehicle. He was tall, impeccably dressed in a tailored navy blue suit, and carried himself with an aura of authority that commanded respect. His dark hair was neatly styled, and his sharp features were softened by a pair of warm brown eyes that seemed to take in everything around him. This was Alexander Drake, the CEO of the company, an individual whose name had become synonymous with innovation and success. Emily recognized him instantly. His face had been featured in countless interviews and magazine covers, but seeing him in person was different. There was something magnetic about him, a quiet confidence that made people stop and pay attention. A brief moment, their eyes met. Emily froze, unsure whether to look away or offer a polite smile. Her heart skipped a beat as she realized he was looking directly at her, his gaze steady and thoughtful. She felt oddly self-conscious standing there in her simple outfit, next to her battered bicycle, while he radiated wealth and power. Yet instead of feeling intimidated, she found herself holding his gaze, refusing to let her insecurities get the better of her. If anything, she stood a little taller, determined not to shrink under his scrutiny. Alexander, too, seemed intrigued. He hesitated for a fraction of a second longer than necessary, studying her with an expression that hinted at curiosity rather than judgment. To him, Emily was an enigma, a young woman who had arrived on a bicycle at a place where most people pulled up in expensive cars. There was no arrogance in her posture, no attempt to blend into the crowd. Instead, she carried herself with quiet dignity, as if she belonged exactly where she was. That realization struck a chord deep within him. "Good morning, Alexander," said finally, his voice smooth and measured. He offered her a small courteous nod before turning to follow his assistant into the building. Emily blinked, momentarily stunned by the unexpected interaction. She hadn't expected him to acknowledge her at all, let alone greet her so politely. For someone of his stature, it would have been easy to walk past without a second glance. Yet here he was, treating her with the same level of respect he might extend to anyone else. As Emily watched him disappear through the glass doors, she couldn't shake off the strange sensation lingering in her chest. Part of her wondered if their encounter held any significance, while another part dismissed it as nothing more than a fleeting moment. After all, what could a CEO possibly think of someone like her? Still, she couldn't deny the faint spark of hope that flickered within her. Maybe, just maybe, this day would turn out differently than she'd anticipated. Inside the building, Emily was greeted by a receptionist who guided her to a waiting area. She sat down on a plush leather couch, clutching her bag tightly as she tried to calm her racing thoughts. The lobby was spacious and elegantly designed, with high ceilings, marble floors, and abstract art pieces adorning the walls. Employees bustled about, some carrying laptops, others engaged in animated conversations. Despite the buzz of activity, Emily felt a sense of calm wash over her. She reminded herself why she was here, to prove that she deserved a chance regardless of her circumstances. While she waited, her mind drifted back to Alexander. Who was he really? Beyond the public persona of a successful entrepreneur lay a man whose life was likely far removed from hers. He lived in a world of board meetings, private jets, and endless opportunities, whereas she struggled to make ends meet. And yet, during their brief exchange, she'd sensed a hint of vulnerability beneath his composed exterior, a longing for authenticity in a sea of pretense. Perhaps that was why he'd taken notice of her. Or perhaps she was reading too much into it. A few minutes later, an HR representative called her name, snapping her out of her thoughts. "Emily Carter?" the woman asked warmly, offering a reassuring smile. "We're ready for you now." Taking a deep breath, Emily rose to her feet and followed the representative down a long corridor lined with framed awards and accolades. Each step brought her closer to the interview room, and with it came a surge of determination. Whatever happened next, she vowed to give it her all. Unbeknownst to Emily, Alexander had also been observing her arrival from afar. After greeting her outside, he'd made his way to the executive suite, where he spent a few moments reflecting on their brief interaction. Something about her had caught his attention. Her poise, her resilience, the way she carried herself with grace despite the obvious challenges she faced. In a world filled with people clamoring for recognition, Emily stood apart. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. She simply existed as herself, unapologetically and authentically. Alexander found himself wondering about her story. What drove her to pursue this opportunity? Was biking to such an important interview a testament to her resourcefulness? Or was it a reflection of the obstacles she'd overcome? These questions lingered in his mind as he prepared for the day's schedule, which included sitting in on several interviews, including hers. Though he rarely participated in hiring processes, today felt different. He wanted to see for himself what made Emily Carter tick. Meanwhile, Emily entered the interview room, her nerves settling into a steady rhythm of focus. The panel of executives greeted her warmly, and she took a seat across from them, ready to answer whatever questions they threw her way. As the interview progressed, she spoke passionately about her experiences, her goals, and her belief in the power of hard work. Her words flowed naturally, untainted by rehearsed scripts or exaggerated claims. She was genuine, and it showed. Throughout the session, Alexander listened intently from the back of the room, his presence barely noticeable to the other panel members. But Emily couldn't ignore the fact that he was there, watching her every move. At times she caught glimpses of him scribbling notes or nodding approvingly when she answered particularly well. It was disconcerting, yet oddly motivating. She pushed herself harder, determined to leave a lasting impression. Not just on the panel, but on the man who had acknowledged her mere hours ago. By the end of the interview, Emily felt drained but satisfied. She thanked the panel for their time and exited the room, her mind racing with possibilities. Could she have done enough to stand out? Would they see her potential beyond her lack of experience? Only time would tell. As she walked back to retrieve her bike, she allowed herself a small smile. No matter the outcome, she had given it her best shot, and that was something she could be proud of. Back in his office, Alexander leaned back in his chair, replaying snippets of Emily's answers in his mind. There was no denying that she had impressed him, not only with her knowledge but with her unwavering spirit. She reminded him of a younger version of himself, someone who refused to let circumstances dictate their future. He made a mental note to discuss her candidacy with the hiring team. For reasons he couldn't fully explain, he felt certain that Emily Carter was destined for greatness, and he wanted to be part of her journey. The interview had been a whirlwind of questions, answers, and moments of self-doubt. Emily sat in the waiting area after it was over, her fingers nervously tapping against the strap of her bag. The panel of executives had asked her about everything, from her academic background to how she would handle high-pressure situations at work. She had answered as honestly and confidently as she could, drawing on her experiences working part-time jobs while studying and the lessons she'd learned along the way. But now, sitting alone in the quiet lobby, She couldn't help but wonder if she'd done enough. She glanced around the room, taking in the sleek furniture and the polished floors that reflected the soft glow of overhead lights. It was a world so different from the one she was used to, a stark contrast to her tiny apartment or the bike rides through dusty streets. For a moment she felt out of place, like an imposter who didn't belong here. But then she reminded herself why she was here, to chase her dreams no matter how daunting they seemed. Just as she was about to stand up and leave, a familiar voice called her name. Emily? Turning toward the sound, she saw Alexander Drake, walking toward her. His presence immediately made her heart skip a beat. He wasn't wearing the same suit he'd had on earlier. Instead, he wore a more casual blazer paired with dark trousers, which somehow made him seem even more approachable. Yet his commanding aura remained unchanged. "Hi," Emily said softly, unsure of what to expect. She hadn't anticipated seeing him again so soon, especially not in this setting. "Is everything okay?" Alexander smiled, his expression warm yet unreadable. "Everything's fine," he assured her. "I just wanted to thank you for coming in today. You handled yourself incredibly well during the interview." Emily blinked, surprised by the compliment. "Thank you," she replied hesitantly. "I did my best." "That much was clear," Alexander said, nodding approvingly. "Your responses were thoughtful, and your passion for the role really came through. I don't think I've seen anyone speak with such conviction in a long time." Her cheeks flushed slightly at the praise. "I guess I just believe in giving it my all no matter what. And that's exactly what sets people apart," Alexander said, his tone sincere. "Hard work and determination are rare qualities these days. They're also the foundation of this company." Emily nodded, feeling a flicker of hope ignite within her. Maybe, just maybe, she had made a stronger impression than she'd thought. Still, she tried to temper her expectations. After all, landing a job at a prestigious company like this wasn't easy, especially for someone like her without years of experience under her belt. "I'll be honest," Alexander continued, leaning casually against the edge of a nearby table. "When I first saw you outside this morning, I wasn't sure what to make of you. Biking to an interview isn't something most people would do." Emily chuckled nervously. "It's not exactly glamorous, but it gets me where I need to go." "It's more than that," Alexander said, his gaze steady. "It shows resourcefulness, resilience, and a willingness to overcome obstacles. Those are traits we value highly here." Emily looked down at her hands, feeling both flattered and humbled by his words. She hadn't expected anyone, let alone the CEO, to notice something like that. In fact, she'd worried that arriving on a bicycle might have worked against her. But hearing Alexander acknowledge it as a strength gave her a renewed sense of confidence. "I'm glad you think so," she said quietly. "Sometimes it feels like everyone else has all the advantages, you know? Like they're starting 10 steps ahead." "That may be true," Alexander admitted. "But life isn't always about where you start. It's about how far you're willing to go to reach your goals. And from what I've seen today, you're someone who's willing to put in the effort." His words resonated deeply with Emily. Growing up, she'd often felt overshadowed by peers who seemed to have everything handed to them. But her parents had always taught her that success wasn't about shortcuts. It was about perseverance. Hearing Alexander echo those sentiments made her feel like she wasn't alone in believing in the power of hard work. Before she could respond, Alexander straightened up and glanced at his watch. "I should let you get going. You must have other things to do. But I wanted to personally thank you for taking the time to meet with us today. We'll be in touch soon." Emily stood up, offering him a grateful smile. "Thank you for your time, Mr. Drake, and for noticing." He returned her smile, his eyes crinkling slightly at the corners. "Call me Alexander, and don't worry, I noticed plenty." As Emily walked away, heading back to retrieve her bike, she replayed their conversation in her mind. There was something genuine about the way he spoke to her, as if he truly cared about her potential. It was a refreshing change from the dismissive attitudes she'd encountered elsewhere. For the first time in weeks, she allowed herself to feel optimistic about her chances. Later that evening, Emily returned home, exhausted but exhilarated. She parked her bike in its usual spot and flopped onto her couch, staring at the ceiling as she reflected on the day's events. The interview itself had gone well, she thought, though she still wasn't sure if she'd impressed the panel enough to secure the job. What lingered in her mind, however, was Alexander's unexpected interest in her. Why had he taken the time to speak with her afterward? Was it purely professional, or was there something more to it? Over the next few days, Emily threw herself into her routine, trying to distract herself from the uncertainty of waiting for a response. She cleaned her apartment, caught up on laundry, and even spent an afternoon volunteering at a local community center, a cause she was passionate about. But no matter how busy she kept herself, thoughts of Alexander kept creeping back into her mind. There was something about him that intrigued her, something beyond his wealth and status. It was the way he carried himself with quiet authority, yet seemed genuinely interested in others. She couldn't quite put her finger on it, but she knew she hadn't met anyone like him before. Then, on the fourth day, her phone rang. Seeing an unfamiliar number flash across the screen, Emily hesitated for a moment before answering. "Hello? Ms. Carter?" a cheerful voice said on the other end. "This is Sarah from HR at Drake Enterprises. I'm calling to let you know that we'd like to offer you the position." For a split second, Emily forgot how to breathe. Her heart raced as the words sunk in. "Really?" she managed to stammer. "Are you serious?" "Yes, absolutely," Sarah replied. "You made a fantastic impression on everyone, including Mr. Drake. We're thrilled to have you join our team." Tears welled up in Emily's eyes as gratitude overwhelmed her. All the late nights, the rejections, the sacrifices, it had all led to this moment. "Thank you so much," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "I can't wait to get started." After hanging up, Emily sat in stunned silence, letting the reality of the situation sink in. She had done it. Against all odds, she had landed the job. And judging by Sarah's comment, Alexander had played a key role in advocating for her hiring. The realization sent a shiver down her spine. Was it possible that he saw something in her that went beyond her qualifications? The following week, Emily returned to the office to sign her contract and receive an orientation schedule. This time, when she arrived, she was greeted by Alexander himself. He welcomed her warmly, shaking her hand firmly and congratulating her on joining the team. As they walked to his office to discuss the details of her new role, Emily couldn't help but notice how naturally he guided the conversation, asking thoughtful questions about her background and aspirations. "You deserve, this opportunity," Alexander told her as they sat down in his spacious office. "But I want you to know that I'll be keeping an eye on your progress. I see a lot of potential in you, Emily, and I'd like to help you grow within the company." His words filled her with a mix of pride and determination. Here was the CEO of one of the most successful companies in the industry, offering to mentor her personally. It was an opportunity she never could have imagined, and she vowed to make the most of it. As their meeting drew to a close, Alexander leaned forward slightly, his expression thoughtful. "One last thing," he said. "I know we've only just met, but I feel like there's something special about you, something real. If you're open to it, I'd love to take you to dinner sometime, not as a boss or colleague, but as someone who genuinely wants to get to know you better." Emily froze, caught off guard by the invitation. Dinner? With Alexander Drake? The idea seemed almost surreal. Yet as she looked into his earnest eyes, she realized that his interest in her extended beyond the professional realm. There was a connection between them, subtle but undeniable, and it intrigued her as much as it scared her. "I'd like that," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "Thank you." Alexander smiled, clearly pleased by her response. "Good, I'll make the arrangements." As Emily left his office, her mind buzzed with excitement and uncertainty. She had just landed her dream job, earned the respect of a powerful CEO, and been invited to dinner by the same man, all within the span of a week. Life had a funny way of surprising you when you least expected it, and as she pedaled home on her trusty bicycle, She couldn't help but feel that her journey was only beginning. Emily's first few weeks at Drake Enterprises were a whirlwind of learning, adapting, and proving herself in an environment that was both exhilarating and intimidating. The office buzzed with energy, filled with employees who seemed to effortlessly navigate the fast-paced corporate world. For someone like Emily, who came from a modest background and had never worked in such a high-stakes setting before, it was overwhelming, but also incredibly rewarding. She threw herself into her tasks, determined to show that she belonged. Alexander kept his word about mentoring her. From the very beginning, he made it a point to check in regularly, offering guidance and advice whenever she needed it. At first, their interactions were purely professional, discussions about projects, strategies, and ways to improve efficiency. But as time went on, Emily began to notice small gestures that hinted at something deeper. He remembered details from previous conversations, asked thoughtful questions about her life outside work, and always encouraged her to share her ideas, no matter how unconventional they might seem. One evening, after a particularly long day, Emily found herself lingering in the office, poring over spreadsheets for a project she was leading. Most of her colleagues had already left, but Alexander's light was still on in his corner office. Curious, she peeked inside and saw him hunched over his desk, typing furiously on his laptop. When he noticed her standing there, he looked up and smiled. "Still here?" he asked, leaning back in his chair. "I thought everyone would have gone home by now." "I could say the same about you," Emily replied with a grin. "This report isn't going to finish itself." Alexander chuckled softly. "True enough. But don't burn yourself out. You've already impressed me more than once today." His comment caught her off guard, and she felt her cheeks flush slightly. "Thanks," she said, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "I just want to make sure I'm doing everything right." "You are," he assured her, his tone sincere. "In fact, I've been meaning to talk to you about something. Do you have a moment?" Emily hesitated for a second, then nodded and stepped into his office. She sat down across from him, trying to ignore the butterflies fluttering in her stomach. There was something about being alone with Alexander that made her feel both nervous and intrigued. His presence was magnetic, yet comforting, a paradox she couldn't quite explain. "I wanted to commend you on the way you handled the client presentation earlier," Alexander began, folding his hands on the desk. "You spoke with confidence, addressed their concerns directly, and even managed to inject some creativity into your pitch. Not many people can pull that off, especially not someone who's only been here a short while." Emily blinked, surprised by the praise. "I wasn't sure if I did okay," she admitted. The client seemed skeptical at first. "They were," Alexander confirmed. "But that's exactly why your performance stood out. You didn't let their doubts discourage you. Instead, you leaned into them, turning potential obstacles into opportunities. That kind of resilience is rare and valuable." Her heart swelled with pride at his words. It wasn't often that she received validation for her efforts, and hearing it from Alexander meant more than she cared to admit. "Thank you," she said quietly. "That means a lot coming from you." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence between them was comfortable, almost intimate. Alexander studied her face, his expression softening as if he were seeing her in a new light. Finally, he broke the quiet. "There's something else I'd like to discuss," he said, his voice dropping slightly. "Something beyond work." Emily's pulse quickened. She had suspected that their relationship might be evolving into something more, but hearing him acknowledge it sent a jolt of anticipation through her. "Okay," she said cautiously. "What is it?" Alexander leaned forward, his elbows resting on the desk. "Ever since I met you that morning outside the building, I've been intrigued by you. Your determination, your authenticity. It's refreshing. And the more I get to know you, the more I realize how much we have in common." He paused, searching her eyes for a reaction. Emily swallowed hard, unsure of what to say. Part of her wanted to dismiss his words as mere flattery, but another part knew he was being genuine. She had seen glimpses of vulnerability beneath his polished exterior, the moments when he talked about his own struggles growing up, or the passion he poured into building his company. He wasn't just a CEO, he was a person with dreams, fears, and desires. "I won't lie," he continued. "I'm drawn to you, Emily. Not because of what you can do for me professionally, but because of who you are. You remind me of why I started this company, to create opportunities for people who deserve them, regardless of where they come from." His confession left her speechless. Here was a man who could have anyone he wanted, yet he chose to open up to her, a woman who had arrived on a bicycle and entered his world without pretense or expectation. It was humbling and terrifying and exhilarating all at once. "I don't know what to say," Emily admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "This is unexpected." "I understand if you need time to process it," Alexander said quickly, sensing her hesitation. "I'm not asking for anything right now. I just wanted to be honest about how I feel." She nodded slowly, gathering her thoughts. "It's not that I don't appreciate what you're saying, I do, it's just complicated. We work together and our worlds are so different. How would that even work?" "It doesn't have to be complicated," he replied gently. "We take it one step at a time. Start with dinner. Let's see where things go from there." The simplicity of his suggestion calmed her nerves. Dinner wasn't a commitment. It was a chance to explore the connection they shared without putting too much pressure on either of them. After a brief pause, she smiled faintly. "All right. I'll go to dinner with you." Relief and excitement flickered in Alexander's eyes. "Good. I'll make the arrangements." The night of their dinner arrived sooner than Emily expected. Alexander had chosen a cozy Italian restaurant tucked away in a quiet part of town. It wasn't flashy or extravagant, but it exuded warmth and charm, a reflection of his personality, she realized. As she walked in, she spotted him waiting near the entrance, looking every bit as handsome as she remembered. "You look beautiful," he said as he pulled out her chair. Emily blushed, thanking him as she took her seat. The atmosphere was relaxed, allowing them to talk freely without the constraints of the office. Over plates of pasta and glasses of wine, they delved into topics they hadn't dared broach before: childhood memories, personal challenges, and aspirations for the future. One point, Alexander leaned closer, his gaze intense. "Do you ever wonder why certain paths cross? Like maybe there's a reason behind it all?" Emily tilted her head, considering his question. "Sometimes. I like to think that everything happens for a reason, even if we don't understand it." "At the time?" He nodded, a small smile playing on his lips. "That's how I feel about meeting you. It wasn't random. You biking to that interview? It was fate." Her breath hitched at his words. Fate? Was it possible that their encounter had been more than coincidence? As the evening wore on, Emily found herself letting her guard down, sharing parts of herself she rarely revealed to others. And in return, Alexander opened up too, showing her sides of him she hadn't seen before. By the end of the night, as they strolled along the moonlit streets, Emily knew one thing for certain: whatever lay ahead, she was ready to face it with Alexander by her side. The weeks that followed their dinner were a blur of late-night strategy sessions, shared laughter, and quiet moments of connection. Emily and Alexander's relationship deepened with each passing day, evolving from mentor and mentee to something far more meaningful. At work, they maintained professionalism, keeping their budding romance discreet out of respect for their colleagues. But outside the office, they allowed themselves to explore the bond they shared, a bond that grew stronger with every conversation, every glance, and every touch. One evening, after a particularly grueling project deadline, Alexander invited Emily to join him at his penthouse apartment. It was the first time she had been to his home, and as she stepped inside, she was struck by its understated elegance. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered breathtaking views of the city skyline, while minimalist furniture gave the space a serene, almost meditative quality. Despite its opulence, the apartment felt warm and inviting, a reflection of Alexander's personality. "Welcome," he said, handing her a glass of sparkling water. "I thought we could unwind here tonight instead of going out. You've earned it." Emily smiled gratefully, taking in her surroundings. "It's beautiful," she murmured, walking toward the window. The lights of the city twinkled below, creating a mesmerizing tapestry of colors. For a moment, she forgot about the stress of work and simply absorbed the tranquility of the moment. Alexander joined her by the window, standing close enough that their shoulders brushed lightly. "You know," he began, his voice soft, "this view reminds me of you." Surprised, Emily turned to look at him. "Me? How?" "It's resilient yet peaceful," he explained. "No matter how chaotic the city gets, this place always feels calm. That's how I see you. Someone who can weather any storm without losing sight of who you are." His words touched her deeply, and she found herself struggling to hold back tears. "That's one of the nicest things anyone's ever said to me," she admitted. Alexander reached out, gently brushing a strand of hair from her face. "It's the truth, Emily. You inspire me in ways I didn't think were possible." Their eyes locked, and for a moment time seemed to stand still. Then slowly, Alexander leaned in, his lips meeting hers in a tender kiss. It was gentle, almost hesitant, as if he were afraid of moving too quickly. But when Emily responded, wrapping her arms around his neck, the hesitation melted away, replaced by a warmth and passion that neither of them could deny. As their relationship blossomed, Emily began to notice subtle changes in Alexander. He became more open, more vulnerable, allowing her to see the man behind the polished exterior. They spent hours talking about their dreams, fears, and the experiences that had shaped them. Alexander spoke candidly about the pressures of running a company, the loneliness that came with success, and his longing for authenticity in a world obsessed with appearances. In turn, Emily shared stories of her struggles growing up, the sacrifices her family had made, the nights she'd spent studying by candlelight during power outages, and the unwavering belief in herself that had carried her through. Through these conversations, they discovered how much they had in common. Both had faced adversity, both valued hard work and integrity, and both wanted to make a difference in the world. Their shared values created a foundation for their relationship, strengthening the connection they felt. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. As their bond deepened, doubts began to creep in. Emily worried about the disparity between their worlds. Alexander lived in a realm of luxury and privilege, while she was still paying off student loans and counting every penny. Would their differences eventually drive them apart? And what about the workplace dynamics? Could they maintain their professional relationship while pursuing something personal? One night after a long day at the office, Emily decided to voice her concerns. They were sitting on Alexander's couch, sharing a bowl of popcorn while watching an old black-and-white movie. The cozy atmosphere made it easier to broach difficult topics. "Alexander," she began hesitantly, "can I ask you something?" "Of course," he replied, turning off the TV and giving her his full attention. "What's on your mind?" She took a deep breath, choosing her words carefully. "Do you ever worry about us, about how different our lives are? I mean, you're the CEO of this huge company and I'm just starting out. People might think I only got my job because of you." Alexander frowned, clearly troubled by her concerns. "Is that what you think?" he asked softly. "That your position here has anything to do with me?" "No," Emily said quickly. "I know I earned this job fair and square, but others might not see it that way. And honestly, sometimes I wonder if I belong in your world." Alexander sighed, reaching for her hand. "Emily, I won't lie. It's not going to be easy. There will be challenges, misunderstandings, maybe even judgment from others. But none of that matters if we're honest with ourselves and each other. What we have isn't about titles or wealth. It's about connection. You belong wherever you choose to be, including right here with me." His words reassured her, but she couldn't shake the lingering uncertainty. "And what about work?" she pressed. "How do we keep things professional without letting our feelings interfere?" "We set boundaries," Alexander said firmly. "We've done it before and we can continue to do it. Besides, I trust you to call me out if I cross a line, and I hope you'll trust me to do the same." Emily nodded, feeling a weight lift off her shoulders. His honesty and willingness to address her concerns meant everything to her. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for understanding." "Always," he replied, pulling her into a hug. "We'll figure this out together, no matter what." Their newfound commitment to navigating their relationship strengthened not only their personal bond, but also their professional collaboration. With Alexander's guidance, Emily quickly rose through the ranks, earning promotions and accolades for her innovative ideas and tireless work ethic. Meanwhile, Alexander found renewed purpose in mentoring her, inspired by her determination and creativity. Together, they tackled ambitious projects, pushing the company to new heights. During one particularly challenging initiative, a campaign aimed at promoting diversity and inclusion within the industry, Emily suggested a bold idea: partnering with local organizations to provide scholarships and internships for underprivileged youth. It was a cause close to her heart, born out of her own struggles and her desire to create opportunities for others like her. When she pitched the idea to Alexander, he listened intently, his expression thoughtful. "This is exactly the kind of initiative we need," he said finally. "It aligns perfectly with our mission to empower people. Let's make it happen." With his support, Emily spearheaded the project, pouring her energy into making it a success. The campaign launched to widespread acclaim, earning praise from employees, clients, and the media alike. For Emily, it was a defining moment, a testament to her ability to effect change and leave a lasting impact. As the months passed, Emily and Alexander's partnership, both personal and professional, became the stuff of legend within the company. Colleagues admired their dynamic, noting how they complemented each other's strengths and balanced each other's weaknesses. Yet despite their achievements, they remained grounded, never losing sight of the values that brought them together. One evening, as they stood side by side on Alexander's balcony, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and pink, Emily felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. She had come so far since that fateful morning when she biked to her interview, unsure of what lay ahead. Now, she had not only landed her dream job, but also found love and fulfillment in the most unexpected place. "I never imagined my life would turn out like this," she confessed, leaning her head against Alexander's shoulder. "Neither did I," he admitted, wrapping an arm around her. "But I wouldn't trade it for anything." In that moment, surrounded by beauty and possibility, Emily knew she had found her happily ever after, not in spite of her journey, but because of it. Months had passed since Emily and Alexander first crossed paths, and their lives had intertwined in ways neither of them could have predicted. The once unlikely pairing, a young woman who arrived at a job interview on a bicycle and the powerful CEO of a thriving company, had blossomed into a partnership built on mutual respect, shared values, and an unshakable bond. Their journey together had been filled with challenges, triumphs, and moments of profound growth, both personally and professionally. On a crisp autumn evening, nearly a year after Emily's fateful bike ride, the couple stood side by side at a grand charity gala hosted by Drake Enterprises. The event was held in a lavish ballroom adorned with glittering chandeliers, towering floral arrangements, and tables draped in pristine white linens. Guests mingled beneath twinkling lights, sipping champagne and discussing the initiatives that had brought them all together. Tonight wasn't just about celebrating the company's success. It was about giving back to the community, a cause that had become deeply meaningful to both Emily and Alexander. Emily looked stunning in a floor-length emerald gown gifted to her by Alexander for the occasion. The dress hugged her curves perfectly, its shimmering fabric catching the light with every step she took. Her hair was styled in loose waves, framing her face elegantly, while a pair of diamond earrings sparkled against her skin. Though she felt out of place among the crowd of wealthy elites, she carried herself with quiet confidence, knowing she belonged exactly where she was. Alexander, as always, cut a striking figure in his tailored black tuxedo. His commanding presence drew attention wherever he went, but tonight his focus was solely on Emily. As they greeted guests and posed for photographs, he couldn't help but steal glances at her, marveling at how far she'd come since that morning, outside the office building. To him, she was more than just a partner or colleague. She was the embodiment of resilience, authenticity, and hope. The highlight of the evening came when Alexander took the stage to deliver a speech. The room fell silent as he adjusted the microphone and scanned the audience, his eyes finally resting on Emily. She offered him a reassuring smile, silently encouraging him to speak from the heart. "Thank you all for being here tonight," Alexander began, his voice steady and warm. "This gala represents more than just another milestone for our company. It's a celebration of the power of opportunity, the belief that everyone, regardless of their circumstances, deserves a chance to succeed." He paused, allowing his words to sink in before continuing. "When I started this company, I wanted to create something that would make a difference, not just in terms of profits, but in people's lives. And over the past year, I've been fortunate enough to witness firsthand what happens when we invest in others. One person in particular has inspired me to rethink what it means to lead with purpose." At this, he turned toward Emily, who shifted uncomfortably under the spotlight. "Many of you know Emily Carter," he said, gesturing toward her. "She joined our team not long ago, bringing with her a fresh perspective, boundless energy, and a determination that reminds us all why we do what we do. But beyond her professional contributions, Emily has taught me the importance of staying grounded, of remembering where we come from, and of using our resources to uplift those around us." The audience erupted into applause, and Emily blushed, furiously, waving off the attention. Alexander stepped down from the podium and returned to her side, taking her hand in his. "You okay?" he whispered, his lips curling into a playful grin. "I'm fine," she replied, though her voice betrayed her nervousness. "You didn't have to say all that." "Yes, I did," he countered. "Because it's true." Later that evening, after dinner and speeches, Emily and Alexander announced a new initiative inspired by Emily's vision, a scholarship program aimed at helping underprivileged youth gain access to education and career opportunities. The program would provide financial aid, mentorship, and internships to students from low-income backgrounds, ensuring they had the tools needed to thrive. It was a cause close to Emily's heart, born out of her own experiences growing up in a world that often seemed stacked against her. As the announcement played on a large screen behind them, showcasing testimonials from beneficiaries of similar programs, Emily stepped forward to address the crowd. Her voice trembled slightly at first, but as she spoke, her passion shone through. "This initiative is about more than just scholarships," she said, her gaze steady and sincere. "It's about creating pathways for people who might otherwise be overlooked. It's about showing them that no matter where they start, they can achieve great things if given the chance. Because I know. I've lived it." Her words resonated deeply with the audience, many of whom rose to their feet in applause. For Emily, it was a moment of validation, proof that her hard work and perseverance had paid off. More importantly, it was a reminder that she hadn't forgotten her roots, even as her life transformed in ways she never imagined. After the formalities ended, the gala transitioned into a night of music and dancing. Emily and Alexander found themselves on the dance floor, swaying gently to the rhythm of a slow song. The world around them faded away, leaving only the two of them beneath the soft glow of fairy lights. "You look beautiful tonight," Alexander murmured, pulling her closer. "But then again, you always do." Emily laughed softly, resting her head against his shoulder. "You're sweet. But I think the real star of the night is the program we launched. I can't wait to see how it impacts people's lives." "It will," he assured her. "And so will you. You're changing the world, Emily. One step at a time." For a moment, they danced in silence, lost in the magic of the evening. Then, as the song drew to a close, Alexander stopped moving and gazed into her eyes. "There's something I need to ask you," he said, his tone serious yet tender. Emily's heartbeat quickened. "What is it?" Reaching into his pocket, Alexander pulled out a small velvet box and dropped to one knee. Gasps rippled through the nearby crowd as Emily froze, her hand flying to her mouth in shock. "Emily Carter," he began, his voice steady, despite the weight of the moment. "You've changed my life in ways I never thought possible. You've shown me the beauty of resilience, the strength of authenticity, and the joy of loving someone wholeheartedly. Will you marry me?" Tears streamed down Emily's face as she nodded vigorously, unable to form words. "Yes," she finally managed to whisper. 1,000 times yes. The room erupted in cheers as Alexander slid the ring onto her finger, a delicate band of diamonds that sparkled brilliantly even in the dim light. He stood up and embraced her tightly, spinning her around as laughter bubbled between them. That night marked the beginning of a new chapter for Emily and Alexander. Together, they continued to break barriers, challenge norms, and inspire those around them. Their love story served as a testament to the idea that destiny often arrives in unexpected ways, and sometimes it comes on two wheels.